Welcome to the fastest daf in town. Today we'll learn Masech the Shavuot daf Chav Zayin. We're going to begin at the very beginning of Chav Zayin about Aleph by the new Mishnah. Says the Masnisin, Nishbul Vatal Samitzvah. So a lot of this we've actually had previously, and here we find the actual source in the Mishnah. A person makes a Shavuot to b'mavatal a mitzvah. For example, he says, I'm not going to eat matzah on Pesach, v'lo bitol, but he ended up eating matzah on Pesach, so potter. So in that situation, he was interested in not doing a mitzvah, which he's mitzvah to do, and even though he ended up breaking, if you will, the shvus bitui, it doesn't make any difference because it's on a mitzvah. However, let's say it's this way: l'kayim v'l'kiyim. Let's say he says, I want to be Mekayim the mitzvah of Pesach and eat matzah. And it turns out he doesn't do it, so potter. In that case, he's also potter. The question is why? Because Shahar Yabedin Shehi Chayiv K'div Rabbi Yehuda ben Beseira. You would think you would be Chayiv based on the words of Rabbi Yehuda ben Beseira, which we actually had this before as well. Rabbi Yehuda ben Beseira, Ma im harishus she'enam mushbalav mahar Sinai harechayim. So let's say I make a shvuah that I'm not going to eat grapes or something like that. So that's something which is within my option. I could always do so or not. The Torah doesn't require me to. So that if I would violate my words, then I would be chayiv shuas bitoi. So mitzvah shehu mushbo leha mahar Sinai edadin shehi chayiv leha. So it should be a lot worse that not only am I breaking my own words, but I'm also breaking the words of Hashem. So certainly you should be chayiv. So therefore, that's what you would think, but that's not the din. The din is if you want to be mekayim, midashul mekayim mitzvah, you're mekayim your potter. Or below, and this is the reason. Lo ima marta b'shvuos harishos shechein asabo lav gehein. So when it comes to I will eat grapes and I don't, or I won't eat grapes and I will, so that's a lav kehain. As we saw before, it's necessary, according to almost all opinions, that based on the words "laharol hativ," that it has to be that you have both possible scenarios, lav and hain. Termin b'shvus mitzvah shol asabo lav kehain shim nishmul v'atav l'bitul potter. If a person says, "I'm not going to do a mitzvah," and you don't do the mitzvah, right? And you end up doing the mitzvah, you're potter because you have no right to be able to make that. So it's the other way around as well. So that's the reason why you're potter when it comes to the Devar Mitzvah either way. Fine. Which again is unique on a Shavuot, because a Shavuot, as we said, is on the Gavra. And since it's on you, the person, so therefore you as a person, you have a Chayvas Haguf. You have an obligation to do a certain mitzvah. By Neder, it's on the Chayfet, so it's different. Turn about. So Yachol Nishbul Vatal Mitzvah Loi Bitol Yehechai. You would think, in the case where a person would make a shvuah, again, let's use the same example. I'm not going to eat matzah this Pesach, and I ended up doing it. You would think maybe you are chayiv. It's only something which you can choose. Well, it's not my option. A mitzvah is not a good choice. It's an obligation. It's a commandment. And therefore, because of that, you're going to be potter. You would think the other way around. Maybe you would be chayiv. Again, the way that we're learning it out is not just because it has to have lav kehain, but just because it's this mitzvah, this parsha is talking davka about rishos. Fine. And Rashi says, like, how do you see that necessarily from the psukim? Okay, so yachol nishmol harol atzmoi. Let's say you make a shvuah about harming yourself, v'loi hara, and you didn't harm yourself. Yachli he potter. And therefore, avi nishmol harol atzmo v'loi hara sharishus biyadai. So apparently, it's kind of hard to understand. You ought to physically hurt yourself. Exactly what does that mean? We'll see. But apparently, it's a rishus, right? You're allowed to, and therefore, if you would make such a shvuah, you would be chayev. Yochel nishmo lahar lacherim. How about harming others? Well, how yehi chayv? You would think you'd be chayv. Tomlor mahar lahetiv mahatav rishus afar rishus yoti nishmo lahar lacherim v'loy harish in rishus biyadai. You don't have the right. You have a right maybe for some reason to hurt yourself for some reason at some point, but never to hurt someone else, and therefore certainly that shvuah would not be chal. How do we know if I make a shvuah to do something good for someone? Talmud lemer o lehetiv. So the fact that it has the word o is coming to include. Ve'ezuhi harasa cherim, harasa cherim, akas ploini the efses moichai. So we just ask, what is the case of harming someone else, smashing their head or whatever it may be? So mamai dekroy b'davar harishos ksivi. Again, now we're back to our question: how do we know that these psukim of Rol Hativ is davar rishos, still davar mitzvah ksivi? And this is the same question that's else numerous times, for example, by Krishma, V'valechta chavaderech. So, however, in mitzvah, but we say your pater, how do you know the psukim is talking about davar rishos, means davar mitzvah? So, similar question, obviously different context. The good has to be comparable to the bad. The bad to the good. The akish haro hatava. So, what is the connection? Ma hatava inu bebitul mitzvah. When it comes to doing something good, it cannot be to mevatel mitzvah. Avara inu bebitul mitzvah. So it can't be about being mevatel mitzvah. So that's how he said, because it doesn't work. You cannot do something in which is a tzivui for you to do a mitzvah. So clearly, good. If you have this link of a haralat of good and bad, they cannot be referring to a mitzvah. Hara gufa hatavihi. Fine. V'ikish hatavel hara mahara inu b'kiyam mitzvah. So he said it's not by a mitzvah. Av hatavel inu b'kiyam mitzvah. Hatav gufa harahi. Okay. Fine. So let's look in Rashi. Shenu b'mitzvah mitzvah. Kagayin oichel b'yam kippurim or chametz b'pesach. Dalul kori hatava. That's not called good. Shari goyim ra l'nafsho. You're causing problems for yourself. El b'kiyam mitzvah kagayin oichel matzah b'leil pesach. Afa ra doloi oichel. Even though it's bad not eating. Shenu b'bitul mitzvah kagayin lo oichel matzah. You say I'm not going to eat matzah. El b'kiyam mitzvah kagayin lo oichel chametz. Im kain lo emoli the kasel l'cha hara hatavahi wa'inin mitzvah v'ha kasva. Okay. So, fine. Okay, weiter. So yihachi b'davar harishos nami lo mishkachas law. So we don't find it by davar rishos. El mid israch o l'rabos hatavos acherim shema mina b'davar harishos ksiv. The fact that we use this riboy of o is to include when you do something good for others, do someone a favor or something. So obviously you're talking about the davar rishos. If when it comes to doing bad to others, we'd include satavas acherim and boy. Okay, I thought we need that to split. Says Rashi, iksiv l'oral lahetiv havamina ad shenishma atravayu. Maybe it's only if you make a shvuah good and bad are you going to be and then you violate both of them. So maybe that's what O is l'chal. No, l'chal tzarich kra. You don't need a pasuk to do that. It's logically they're separate. So Hanich Rabbi Yonasan or Rabbi Yeshaya Ma'ikol Meimar. So who is this? This is a famous machlokas that we see many times in Shas. The Sanya. It says Isha sheyikalos aviv yes imoi. So if a person curses his father and his mother, so that is a severe penalty, as we saw in the Sanhedrin. Now, Ainli el aviv imo. That's only a father and a mother. Aviv v'lo imo v'lo aviv minayin. How do we know? Maybe if only it's because you curse both of them. Maybe if you only curse one of your parents, the din doesn't apply. Aviv imo kilel. Aviv kilel. Imo kilel. Rabbi Shaya. In other words, he needed to actually come up with another source to be able to show that you're chayiv even for just cursing one of the parents. No. The truth is that you can deduce one that it's obviously you can deduce it on its own. Anshi Farish Ucha Kasav Yachtov. Unless it says the word Yachtov to link them both. So what is that? So does Rashi quote it here? No. So this is referring to actually it says in Taisus, which is good. Rabbi Shaya Ha'isra Chamichtav Yachta B'chayrish B'shor V'chamor Shul Yischayev Afil Einim Kishurim Yachad. So the point is, the pasuk over there says you cannot plow an ox and a donkey together, which means that the whole Isser is because they're Yachtav, they're together. But if it doesn't say the word Yachtav, we understand that it's even separately. So therefore you don't need a Oi L'chalek, because it's obvious, according to at least this Shita, that it would be separate. So that's why it's a good, according to Rabbi Yonasan, who says that you don't need it unless it says Yachtav. However, it is still a kasha, according to the Shita of Rabbi Shaya, who says that you do need a reboy. Otherwise, you would think maybe it's only both parents and not one. So therefore, maybe O is teaching us l'chalek, and therefore, how could we use Oi l'ravas l'tavas acher? So on this, afil teim Rabbi Shaya, the Savar Rabbi Kiva the darsh ribu imiyute. So he'll hold like Rabbi Kiva that he uses a ribu imiyut, and therefore it's more inclusive. And therefore, it's only coming, as we saw this before, the whole machlokas between Rabbi Kiva and Rabbi Shmuel is whether or not you darshan a riboy miyut or klal prat. And the Gemara over there said it's also totally on who their rebbeim are. So Rabbi Kiva's Rebbe was Nachman Ish Gamzu, which is interesting that the Gemara said that. But because of that, he also darshan riboy miyute, and therefore he did the same. And that was the whole miyut is Rabbi Komili. Why miyut was only come to exclude a levatos a mitzvah. So we already used that. So we don't need v'yatele oil l'chalek, and therefore the word oil is extra. In fact, l'chalek. Now, if it's a davar rishos mimai davar mitzvah, it's coming to exclude davar mitzvah, as you said. El iyam davar mitzvah ksiv mimai kamamayit. So according to him, it's not coming to exclude anything. And again, we learned previously that is the one thing that's being excluded regarding a Shavuos bitoy. Rabbi Yehuda ben Beseira, my imar rishus l'chulu Rabbanan shaber kamerleu Rabbi Yehuda ben Beseira. So what exactly is Rabbi Yehuda ben Beseira's logic in this Kavachaymer? It doesn't seem to be logical. Rabbi Yehuda ben Beseira umelcha atu what? Hatavas acherim lav afagav. When it comes to doing good for someone else, lav is not afagav deleis b'chalal haras acherim. Nonetheless, it's not in the category of doing bad. The Rav Rachmana Torah includes that you're going to be chayiv. Hachanam became mitzvah. After the leis of a bittul mitzvah, even though it's not in the category, you can't obviously couple it together with bittul mitzvah. You can't be mavatal a mitzvah. To make a shul mavatal mitzvah, you should be able to make a mitzvah. You should be able to make a shul kaim mitzvah, because Rav Rachmana, just like the Torah is including. Has a reboy to include hatavas acherim, even though haras acherim is not okay. You can't harm someone else, but you can do good to someone else. So you can be chayiv on that. So you should also be chayiv on ki mitzvah. Rabbanan hasam isabuloi etiv hacha mi isabul akayim. So it says there's a difference when it comes to harming someone or doing good. So you can learn it from blo ativ. For example, giving a gift to someone who's rich. Over here, it's blo akayim. So it's not the same thing. Okay, let's continue. I don't have any questions there. Let's see, maybe TA. Nope, we didn't have TA21. Let's see, TB. Let's see what we're up to here. TB22. Libid Rabbanan Denishmal Kai Mitzvah Kivan Delesa Balav Hein Potter Maishna Matavas Acherim Delesa Baharosam. I got this completely wrong, but I think this is where we're at. So let's see what the answer that Dirshu gave. So for question TB22, it says Isabul Ativ, Mashin Kin B'mitzvah Leisabul Akayim. So this is how the Rabban will say it. So when it comes to a Tavas Acherim, the reason why that does work is because Isabul Itiv. However, when it comes to a mitzvah, Leisabul Akayim. Okay. So that's the end piece over here, which is TB22. So let's mark this down. Okay. Rabbanan Hasam Isabul Itiv. Hacham Ika Mi Isabul Akayim. And let's see, maybe we can look at this Rashi over here. Isabul Itiv Lacherim Kikay Matan Lashirim. Okay. That's basically what we're looking for that. And let's get to the next right page. Okay, let's see the next Mishnah. It says the Masnis. Shavuot shel oichel kikar zu. Person makes a shul, I'm not going to eat this particular bread, right? Which is in the future, which even Rabbi Shmuel holds it is chal. Or Shavuot shel ochlena, use this language. We also had this before. Shavuot shel ochlena. She made all these statements. The ochla eno chayv alachas. Zuhi shvuos bitui. So even though it's true, it sounds like you said it numerous times. So that we're not saying that it's like you're saying 3 different shvuos to be chayiv 3, but rather you're only chayiv 1. It says Rashi shein shvuah chala al shvuah. Even though it's true, they are 3 shvuos, but we know that a shvuah is not chal another shvuah. And the reason, again, is because what we're saying, you cannot make a shvuah to a mitzvah. And because when you make a shvuah, now there's a mitzvah to mekayim those words. And therefore, a shvuah is not chal another shvuah. Okay. Now, zuhi shvuos bitui. Shechayven al zedainim makis val shegagasa karis obiyarid. So again, this is a case where you're chayiv, which is unusual because normally when you're chayav a carbon, b'shoigeg, then b'mezid it's kares. But over here, there's no kares. It's a lav shembo kares, which is a chiddush. Around there, all you do is get malchus b'mezid. And the shoigeg is a karno of yard, which again is also a great cool. And it's also b'dibura only. Okay, shua shav hayavin al zedainim makas shkagasa potter. So that's shuas bitoy. However, on a shua shav, which we've discussed 2 possibilities, what is a shua shav, then you are going to be chayav malchus, but you're going to be potter. There's no carbon oil yared for that. Okay, and one of the ways we said a shua shav is someone who makes a shua on something which is a davar, which is nicker to 3 people, and it's a davar yadua, and it's obvious that you're making no sense. You're saying about a stone pillar that it's made out of gold, or marshal. So it says the Gemara, why do we say it this way? It's coming to teach us, the reason is that that anything of bread, that's what it sounds like. That I'm not going to eat anything. That I'm not going to eat this whole thing. You only have 1. It sounds like then you be chayiv 2. I'm not going to eat this bread. Once you eat a kazayas of your chayiv. So you're not going to eat this whole thing. So it's an interesting language. It says Rashi, in this case, you are chayiv because it is chal. The ilu sholach kula mashma. When you say I'm not going to eat sholach lena, means the whole thing. Also, you're not answering a small amount, only the whole thing. When you then say shul oichel, it means any amount of bread. And therefore you're chayiv. If you finish the whole thing, so it's possible that you can be chayiv twice, one on eating some and one on eating the whole thing. Let's look at question 4a. Shavuot shlo oichel kikar zu, Shavuot shlo achlena, Shavuot shlo achlena eno chayev el achas. Amai shina hatana b'lashon Shavuot shni rishayna. Why does it change the language? Why does it start saying Shavuot shlo oichel? I'm not going to eat. And then he says achlena, I'm not going to eat it. So b'shini halashon kamash malan, the Rabbi, the rak b'seder zeh will chal shniya. Only in this order will the second one not mean anything. Because the first one you said, I'm not going to eat anything. And then you say, I'm not going to eat the whole thing. But if you would have said the other way around, that I'm not going to eat the whole thing, which means if you only eat part of it, there's no violation. And then you say, I'm going to eat it, any of it, so you can be chayim on the second one. Then when you finish the whole thing, you'll be chayim on the first. Okay. Chayiv ad sheyochel eskula. Shavuot shlo achlena v'achlena chayiv el achas v'chol. Hasul lamali hakamashman chayuvahu deleka. Hashvua ika. So there's no chiv carbon because again in shvua chal shvua, so you're going to be chayiv one, but nonetheless it's still considered to be a shvua. Dimishkachas ravcha chayil chayla. If there is some type of space, if you will, in between them, then you are going to it'll be chal. So what does that mean? Normally you make a shvua, and a shvua again, it's for an for an infinite amount of time, let's say. So therefore, each of them really don't add anything. However, look at a Rabbi. The Yom Rabba shim nishal rishayna. Let's say for whatever reason he gets a heter chacham to remove the first shvua, then also shniya tachta. So the second one falls into its place. It's not that the shvuas that you said don't exist. What you said still means something. But the reality is, the second shvua cannot work as long as the first one's still there. However, once the first shvua is removed, so then the second one kicks in. So Leiman Masaili, Misha, another Beis Naziris, you made 2 nidarim about being a nazir. Umana Rishayna, so you counted for the first, Hifresh Lei carbon, Yachach Nishal Rishayna. And then afterwards, the first was removed. Also, Lashni Rishayna. So we say the second one goes in the place of the first. So therefore, we see it's apparently the same thing. We're so Hachi Hashta. Can't compare the case of Nazir to here. Hasam over there, Naziris Mia Isa. Both Naziris are Chal always. The Chimani L'Rishayna Boy Mahader Mimena Lashnia Boy She'ela. So in this case, the chim mani l'rishon, when you're counting the first one, boy mahader mimina l'shniya, you have to count for the second nazirus below she'ela. Bahacha shvua shniya mi'isa klal. Over here, there's nothing you have to do because it doesn't have any meaning. So maybe it wouldn't work. Okay, question 4b. Amai nakat shloisha shvuos lo sagli betarti. Nakat shlishis lashmin and the chivu deleka of a shvu ika sheim yishal al kamaisa chala zu. Okay, why? I don't completely understand that, because what's the difference if it's 2 or 3? Let's look at this Rashi. Lahachi nakat l'minyan lashmin and chivu deleka a shvuos achraynos ha shvuos heim. They're still shvuos. Im yatzal lavatla v'im matzu makim yichayu. So the first one can be removed. Says Rashi, if you're nishal on the first one, also shniya tachtel, then the second one kicks in. And then the second one is this. If you're nishal on the first 2, chal shlishus. I'm not sure what that comes to add. It's like there was never a neder. Okay, so it's like the first one never existed. So why it still has a? Why do you need 3? Why can you learn that from 2? Okay. I guess when you have 3, then you remove the first one, so you can still learn that the second one kicks in now is chal the shvu, and the third one is not. Okay. Perhaps that's the idea behind that. Okay. So Amar Rava, Nishmal Kikar, person makes a shvuah about a bread, the achla, and he eats it. Im shir mimena kazayis nisholel. If he left over a kazayis from the bread, then nisholel. The chayfetz still needs to be here. Therefore, a kazayis to be shoyel the neder. It has to be that there's something there. Achal kula, if you ate the whole thing, in nisholel, because how can you ask a chacham, could you remove my neder, whatever, or my shvuah? The reality is it's not here anyway. So it's only if it still exists. I'm not going to eat from the first kazayas, so obviously surah. So you didn't isser right there anyway. I'm not going to eat the whole thing. So ma'ir kazayas. So what difference is it if there's still a kazayas left or not a kazayas left? I feel koshu nami. Apparently, even if you have the smallest amount, as we continue chav chesed and aleph, that should also be enough to be nishal, because the whole shvuah was about the whole thing. So, provided that you left a little bit over, even if it's less than the kazayas, you should still be nishal on that. So, iboy seimam shlo oichel. It's possible shlo oichel. Iboy seimah. We're talking about shlo ochlena. So, iboy seimah shlo oichel. Now, shlo oichel is mashma, I'm not going to eat anything. So therefore, how do we understand it? So, migu de mahani le she'el kazayis batra, since we say that it works for the last kazayis, mahani le she'el nami kazayis kama, which is kind of interesting, even though maybe you already ate it, and that you already violated that aspect, but we say that since the last kazayis, it's chal, so therefore it's going to work on the whole thing as well, as long as you have a kazayis. That I'm not going to eat the whole loaf, so maybe even if it's a small amount. So where it says yishir kazayis, but even though you're right, technically you would think it's even a mashahu, but if you left over kazayis, chashiv lashdulele, then it's enough that's considered to be a davar chashiv to make for the chacham to be to remove. V'lo lo chashiv leshuli aleha. But if it's less than that, then it's not a davar chashiv. Okay, we're going to stop there. Let's see maybe another question. Question 5. Shvuah shel oichel kikar zu ad matai nisholeha shlo yilke im yoichamina b'mezid. So when could you be ask a chacham to have it removed? So l'chad man de'aymer ad shlo nishtari mimena kazayis. L'chad man de'aymer kol zman shloi laka. Which that part I don't think we saw, but at least we got that some of it. Let's look at question T821. Shavuot shel oichel kikar zu, shavuot shel achlena. So, shavuot shel achlena, shavuot shel oichel. So kama machayev. So as we saw, this was based on what we just saw in our Mishnah, that if you say below oichel, I'm not going to eat anything, then you say lo achlena, you only chayev 1. Below achlena, then taku b'chayiv shtaim. Adkan.